Hello and welcome. Me and my wife Daniela are full-time independent fashion critics. Every 3 months we go to Paris for every showroom and runway we possibly can, and then bring you literally everything. I don't want to brag, but we have the best coverage in the industry. Subscribe if you haven't already, drink some caffeine, and trust me on this, put this video on the big screen. We don't film in 4K for nothing. This is Paris Fashion Week, Fall 2024, ready to wear. Deep breath, let's jump in. With every new Rick Owens season, the general public rushes to his YouTube channel to extend the description and read his all-caps show notes. Rick is the only designer who makes his show notes so freely available to read. I hope he never stops doing this. This season, Rick reminded us of one of his most dominant sources of inspiration, sci-fi adventure novels that his dad would read to him at night when he was a kid. Specifically, Rick names the author Edgar Rice Burroughs, and this is such a great example of a designer creating a gestalt, which is just something that is more than the sum of its parts. Like a lot of Rick's inspiration, you can see where that reference is being used, but there's no one-to-one comparisons. It's the same thing with the movie that Rick is obsessed with, The Ten Commandments, or just like a playlist that has all classical music and cold techno. It's like, I can't make Rick soup without these ingredients, but there is no one-to-one like, oh my gosh, Pharaoh's necklace is what's in spring-summer 2018. The exception here is Charles James. Rick loves to rip off Charles James, and I wish he would do it more often because it's always executed super well. And I mean, look, there's nothing that I can tell you here that you can't already see. I mean, we could talk about how certain pieces are made of recycled tire rubber by Matisse DiMaggio. They're a Parisian BDSM community member, and they got a great eye. It's fucking awesome. These pieces are unusually abstract for Rick. Fittingly, they immediately found their way onto the body of Bjork, where they absolutely belong. This just looks like a whole bird. Consider the lily? Bro, you need to consider bird. Shoes. I'm usually tempted to leave out the most obvious, most striking part of a runway because everyone's already talked about it, but we do need to discuss these shoes a little bit. For Rick Owens, men's always comes before the women's. The men's and the women's runway shows always have the same name. In this case, of course, it's Porterville, and the men's is often it works like a setup for the women's, I guess. So men's was insane this season, very eye-catching. Someone actually wore a pair of the men's boots to the women's show, and despite it being very difficult for them to walk, they looked fucking awesome. Stray 2K fucking crushed that shit. So on the women's side, we do have to make a new shoe. Very rarely does the same exact shoe get copied over. The women's in this case is very slimmed down, but the most noteworthy version of the boot are these badass numbers that got the accordion treatment. Though I think they might be partly inspired by the way that the original men's boots looked when they weren't fully inflated. Shout out to this person for capturing this. This guy's actually super cool. You should follow him. But you can see that right here, because it's not just a balloon, it is a balloon that has been shaped and its purpose is to be around your foot. I really like this approach to making the women's version because most visual people will see an object that is either heavily used or not quite right, not fully inflated, and think, wow, it looks perfect just the way that it is. But the ability to translate that not quite perfect but perfect thing into a new piece of product, that is super challenging, and this is honestly a great case study of how to do that. Shifting gears, Rick is approaching 100 collections. That's a lot. I mean, for context, Alexander McQueen had 36-ish, Margiela had 45-ish, and I would say that in order for a designer to really build out a world for themselves, they need about 30 collections minimum. So Rick is deep in his career. But he has made this absolute point of not allowing himself to stagnate. He does this by forcing himself to change. I would never make a collection that prominently features pink, but if I were to do that, how would I go about it? I mean, that's why we have had such a colorful era of Rick very recently, which he might now be shifting out of. So in the same way, I think Rick might be, for the first time, exploring the idea, go with me here, of contentment. This is going to get very casual here. These are all guesses from Bliss based on the public character of Rick Owens. I think maybe just if you grow up in a conservative environment the way that Rick did, and then you spend your 20s and your 30s partying as hard as humanly possible, then you get clean and sober and you start a company. If that was me, I would just be hell-bent on focus. I have wasted so much time, I just have to focus on my work. And getting clean and sober does require a lot of focus, but decades into a world-renowned design career, It might then be time to try and see what cozy, contented happiness feels like. These clothes, many of them, they feel to me sort of unusually soft, unusually comfortable looking. Even the massive Porterville logo that we saw from last season and this season kind of reminds me of like a graphic on a cozy band t-shirt that you got in high school and that you still wear at night. To contrast them, the men's long johns from Porterville felt like, I am wearing this for the effect. I am the swamp monster. Whereas the women's long johns from this show, and a great deal of the cozy looks throughout the collection, they feel like what the Rick Owens person would wear on an October night just watching movies with their partner. So I think the idea with this show is that for the Rick Owens devotee, these are the clothes that you wear to finally rest. They're the clothes that you put on when it is time to feel warm and safe and contented. And then, you know, a little bit of retrofuturism mixed in with the cashmere helmets, so there's a tiny bit of drama. Okay, so after a runway show that took place during an indoor rainstorm, we are now headed to the Hermès showroom. In my opinion, Hermès showrooms are some of the best in Paris. That way is blocked. Gotcha, thanks. The clothes here are so considered in the construction. Also, Hermès is split in two. They have two different creative directors, one for women's, one for men. This is our first time looking at Nadej's work. I am extremely excited. Hermès is definitely multi-layered, and I'm excited to keep uncovering those layers. Here we're exploring the very separate world of their excellent women's wear creative director, Nadej Van Hesabulski. When you, in your mind palace, think about Hermès, what comes to mind? I can tell you that my personal misconception was that Hermès makes wispy old lady clothes. Okay, so this is completely incorrect. Their women's clothes are consistently about and for women who lead extremely active lives. Nadej has heavily embraced leather clothes during her 10-year tenure. Nadej has heavily embraced leather clothes while at Hermès, but more impressively, Nadej has made it clear that she wants to explore the theme of leather rather than just using it as a textile. Between her last two collections, she seems to be taking different ways of decorating or embellishing leather and using those motifs to inspire the rest of the collection. For example, last season, that was seen in this extensive use of broguing all over leather and like some non-leather items of clothing. And if we could quickly just touch on that, I know it's last season, but real quick, that as a concept was a great idea. Nadej used this super commonplace heritage motif that's most often seen in men's shoes, and Nadej showed us how beautiful it is in the context of women's clothing. The chosen leather embellishments of this season are these rounded studs that can be found just all over the collection. Studs strike a great balance between this idea of traditional leather artisanship and the more masculine motorbike aesthetic, which are brought into this collection in a subtle way, but in ways that when you notice them, they're really beautiful. Look at the texture on these leather pieces and these moto-inspired shoulders. Cleverly, the show notes are titled The Rider. And that name implies that this collection is the cross-section of riding a horse and riding a motorcycle. So it's no accident that leather is such a thematic focus because, I mean, like, what unites horseback riding and motorcycle riding? Leather. Nadej designs for these independent women on the go, and I thought that the indoor rain environment kind of made the Hermès runway work for that idea. This felt very authentic. And I mean, one of the biggest surprises that I've found looking into Hermès is I've learned that the clothes are deeply practical. And I think a lot of the sincerity for this comes because I don't think of Hermès first when I think like celebrity fashion moments. There definitely are a lot of celebrity fashion moments that Hermès has made happen, but that is not the focal point. I mean, like, you can't really run errands around Paris in a gown, but you can wear these leather clothes that are perfectly suited for getting on your bike and getting shit done today. And it's not a big deal for a brand to be like, check it out, we made a shirt, but it's made of leather. Check it out, we made some pants, but they're leather pants. Like, that's all well and good, especially if the leather's nice. No one's going to complain about that. Hermès is not just saying we designed a collection and then we made it with really nice leather. There is real experimentation going on here that I can't get over. I just don't see this at any other brands. The most incredible part of the show, though, were these pieces that look like maybe they're fur, but they were actually ostrich feathers. For real, I was stunned by this technique. It felt like magic. And can you imagine someone wearing this while trotting around on a track? Like, the movement on the front of this vest seems like it was built for horseback riding. Each feather was treated individually and then sewn into these vests and jackets. The treatment here gives them this hardier feeling, especially when they're all clumped together like this. And the shape of this jacket is pretty clearly equestrian. It's a more stiff and rounded shape of what's called a hunt coat, which is part of the uniform that's required for the dressage riding style. Only now it's with these just gorgeous leather accents on the collar. This one, as well as a few other jackets in the collection, were fitted with an internal waist harness. These helped your jacket to stay in place when you are riding either your acoustic or your electric horse. I love seeing this kind of stuff at Hermès. It kind of harkens back to the practicality that makes me love Margiela, for instance, and that makes perfect sense because Nadege worked at Margiela earlier in her career. And I mean, we can be real for a second. Like, I can talk about the clothes as much as I want. At some point, you're like, okay, Bliss, when are we going to talk about bags? Well, there aren't any. We can talk about bags. We will start with the Veru bag, which we see here. The bag's hardware kind of reminds me of the hardware that closes a barn door. This season, it also has a really hefty canvas strap so it stays in place while you're riding. Another accessory is this belt bag that is stirrup inspired, I guess, but it really just ends up looking like jewelry almost, right? And it does seem like Nadege has been at Hermès for long enough that she feels comfortable remixing the staple bags that they make. But this season, the Birkin enjoys a few kickflips that come from the Maison's past. Like the shoulder Birkin famously debuted in the spring 2005 season under Jean Paul Gaultier's tenure. What we do know is that the bag, just at some point in the last year, got brought back. It enjoyed an even more limited run of availability than its impossible to get cousins, which basically just means that I have not seen a customer of Hermès wearing one in real life yet. This season, Nadege scaled down the proportions of the shoulder Birkin into what becomes kind of an east-west version of the Birkin 25? The number 25 just refers to the 25 centimeters that measure out the base of the most popular Birkin at the moment. Like, oh my gosh, am I becoming a bag person? This bag will be desirable. They always are at Hermès. One of the house models, a woman named Marfa Menek, even showed us how it was styled and worn on the runway, the way that Nadege wanted it. But if everyone only went to Hermès for bags, then what about the other thousands of artisan employees whose skills would go totally unused, and some of whom their craft would literally die out if everyone, again, just went for the bags? The next generation of artisans wouldn't have anyone to learn from. And I mean, Hermès does all that they can about that. They have schools to teach new artisans. But for those who really love Hermès, the idea is that you're buying into the vision, which is supporting and preserving the many types of artisans that they employ. Though the bag artisans are obviously pretty good at their job too. With all of these clothes, close up and on a runway, there is this profound love for craft and a desire to keep it around. Also, I realize this isn't directly connected, but I now own an Hermès pop-up book, and I'm kind of obsessed with it. This thing rules. It's $40. If you feel like you need some kind of excuse to go to your local Hermès, this would be the thing to get. Where to start, where to start. I made an episode a number of years ago about how indecipherable and opaque Yohji's work generally feels to me. Like, after 2 documentaries, a handful of very candid interviews with the designer, and a whole lifetime of work, I don't feel any closer to being able to say that I understand what's happening here. And every time I say this, there's like 2 groups of commenters that I just see a ton of. One of which is like, you can't like explain a Yohji Yamamoto show, man. And then on the other end, there are some really intense folks who are like, you cannot understand in numbers what can only be felt in poetry, Bliss. You always know that you are missing major information by being a Western fan of Yohji Yamamoto because it's just so hard to get in the same room with those clothes. And doubly so for the runway pieces. It's like you see this look and you want to dive into its use of the Japanese concept of ma, But first you'd need to understand if this is like a dress or a dress with a jacket and an overcoat or two dresses or like a dress with three skirts. Like, what are we actually looking at here? So, I mean, understandably, a lot of Western Yohji Yamamoto fans just kind of throw their hands up and say, okay, look, I don't understand what's going on here, but I know what I feel when I see it, and that will be enough for me. But speaking for myself, when my understanding is that limited, or when my love of something is so fully based on faith, sentences like, let's look at the details, can feel very threatening. So, sorry, let's look at the details. But yeah, I mean, it is a massively intimidating exercise trying to talk about Yohji's work. He has his own eras. Like, if you just take random looks from random seasons, you can tell that the Yohji look has evolved over time. This isn't like Giorgio Armani, where we can just assume that he's doing pretty much the same thing for his whole life. The show is not all black. There's this general misconception about Yohji that he only does black. At least for the last few years, he hasn't done that in the product or in the runways at all. He almost seems to not do all black, like as a little gotcha, because everyone started referring to him as the master of black. One of the most common themes of Yamamoto-san's oeuvre is runway looks being just a big, beautiful mess, right? It's that same idea again of like, I don't know what's going on here, but wow, that looks great. Okay, so this season, we got a heavy helping of the Yohji stacked chaos. But as is sometimes the case, the photos and the video make it incredibly hard to see because Yamamoto-san does use this really dense black wool for these pieces. The chaos was largely created this season through the use of these geometric pieces. Some were even just like literal square boxes. Some were a little misshapen and some were very strangely shaped. So you might have guessed that Cubism was on the mood board, and we had it confirmed for us that Yohji was inspired by George Brock specifically this season. George Brock, for those who are not familiar, created a lot of work that looks like this. Again, you may have guessed, it's not really like a literal one-to-one anywhere here, but you can see where George Brock heavily inspired these decisions to get made. I've always been really drawn to clothes that encourage the wearer to develop a relationship with their clothes. Like, I honestly hate when clothes are engineered to just become invisible. I personally like to have friendships with my clothes, not for my clothes just to serve me. Okay, so this collection is such a great example of clothing as friendship. The geometric shapes in the clothes are not just doodads hanging off of a jacket. They're the head of a sleeve. Many of them were spacious pockets, and some were even secret pockets. And then another one is just like, this is just a square that is not a pocket. And it is a pocket on the side. A lot of these shapes created a draping effect that I am positive I have not seen through Yohji or anyone else in my life. Like this one, for example, this is a box pocket, but it's built into this hanging pattern piece as well. So the box shapes how that pattern piece falls, but also will likely affect it differently depending on what you're keeping in that pocket. I feel like that could be a whole FIT class, whimsical pattern cutting for load-bearing box pockets. We also closed out the show with a few looks that pay tribute to one of the most well-known Yohji Yamamoto silhouettes of all time. That one. Yohji Yamamoto forever. Love you, King. We are doing something really unusual today. We are going to the fitting session for Akris, which has kind of become an unexpected sleeper hit with the two of us. Akris is a luxury brand. It's a family-owned business, and they specialize in textiles. Almost all of their textiles are custom made by factories that they have close relationships with in Switzerland. I paused, I almost said Sweden. They're not in Sweden, they're in Switzerland. They have only ever had one creative director, Albert, the man who we will be watching do the fittings today. As I've gotten more and more curious about textiles, textile development, and textile innovation, Akris has been one of the few brands that's really stood out to me as one that truly cares about making a difference just in terms of the feeling of the fabric itself. The only other fitting that we've ever been to was our very first fashion week when we went to the fittings for Botter. I imagine this will have a little bit of a different vibe to it, but maybe all fittings are fairly similar. We're about to find out. Quick update, all fittings are not the same. This fitting in particular was something else, most notably just because everyone was really calm. The Fall 24 collection was finished. 90% of the collection was in the room, with enough of it present where Albert was able to give a few collection previews to press and, luckily, us. In terms of the missing 10%, some of the more special looks were arriving the next day. I asked how they usually get transported, and I was told that they arrive on organized racks delivered from their headquarters in St. Gallen, Switzerland, to Paris. In a van. And the more I thought about that, the more it actually made sense, because I would be pissed if TSA lost my Runway collection. For the most part, casting was also complete. I think these models were just trying out for the last few slots in the show and also being used to make sure that the hemlines were just right and didn't need any slight adjustments. Albert and the team, again, were just super duper calm. There was no sense of urgency or rush. Akris has it put together so that they are finished with all the prep at least 24 hours before the show. There just aren't any fires to be put out. Flex. Finally, it was our turn to talk to Albert, and we wanted to get a closer look at the incredible textiles from this season.
So this answer of velvet, where everybody's afraid, because for sure there's very few fabulous velvet to do such a suit. This is a silk velvet. It's super fluid. But you know, I needed to do that stunning pant, and that's the other thing which I think a suit looks new today. It's type of cardigan-esque, lean and sleek, and then but I have then the volume pant on the bottom. Okay?
To me, what I love about that so much is that when velvet is really made of a fine silk rather than a polyester or something else, it holds light differently.
This is the coat of the season, which I feel is probably the most important answer. It's the dual coat, which I have. I think it's perfect because it's a double face coat. In this case, with a bolero, so I can take this off, you know, and then you get the waistcoat, which you can wear in fall. And but then also you can wear the bolero on your own. Imagine the bolero on your own with that white pant, how cool she looks, oder? And this is what I think of. Or then this cardigan, which is the type of more lightweight cashmere, but to give it body, I wanted to line it in silk, but also to make it as a travel cardigan, who is completely versatile, because first of all, when you have a dress, you want the silk on your skin. But if you feel cold, you just reverse it, and then you have the cashmere on your skin, which gives you warmth. But it works also from the silk side because it's fully reversible again, you know. So it's something which is different, it's lightweight, and so you can layer. Or then this melange cashmere t-shirt, which gives really warm. Here I twist two colors, you know, and then you get here denim suit.
When you have different types, because you've now shown me, I think, 5 different types of cashmere here.
Yeah.
Do these all have different properties to them, or is it mostly that like all cashmere is going to handle body heat and outside temperature the same way, or is it a variance?
You know, cashmere is cashmere.
Okay.
You know, it's the best you can have, and I only have 3 suppliers for cashmere. This is the real art of doing. There are several type of cashmere suppliers, but I only work with Biella, and you know, every weight and every double face version or every single has its home, and I don't change. I prove these ones, you know, and then I stick to them. Look, I can show you this here.
Yeah.
This is a 650 gram cashmere, oder? Melange, which means yarn dyed. Then this is cashmere jersey. The tube. You see the difference to the wool.
Absolutely. Friends, every single garment that I touched, and I touched all of them, they were all like this, just unbelievably considered tactile experiences. I don't know, y'all. The idea of latex lace sounds like it's going to be one thing until you see it in person and just realize it's great. Albert really gets into the details and shows us all the amazing parts of the collection that he seemed to be the most proud of. The full collection preview will be on the Patreon soon, and I gotta say, this is a really great opportunity to actually learn real information about textiles. That's one part of the industry where there's frankly a lot of bullshit that gets thrown around from people that don't really know what they're talking about. I can assure you, Albert knows what he's talking about. I strongly encourage you to go look at the full thing. It'll be up as soon as we can get it up there. Okay, and now we're gonna go see the show. We were warmly greeted at the door of the entrance to this insane show space that was raw and really beautiful, actually. Apparently, Albert wanted something that was very pared down for this collection. We walked up the broken escalator to the beautiful show space with huge windows that overlooked the street that we were just on. It was then time to see how everything actually came together, and surprise, surprise, it was great. One of my favorite things that brands sometimes do is a breakdown by look number of the garment type and the fabric composition. It's really, really complicated to get all that information compiled into one place according to a communications person on the Akris team, but Akris does it every single season, and I so appreciate when they do this. This write-up is super valuable. I'm gonna show you why. This is the write-up, but also like this is a sketch. They put fabric samples on the sketch. Look 43, black trapezoid quilted hooded coat. Look 37, kale silk gabardine water repellent stand collar hooded parka. Black gold lacquered wave lace flare gown. Yo, she got the black gold lacquered wave lace flare gown. They're all like this. Look 57, black grayish shadow print silk georgette patch pocket oversized blouse and infinite pant with dual pleats. And I summon Pot of Greed to draw 3 additional cards from my deck, which allows me to summon Pot of Greed. At the preview, Albert showed us these flue dresses that featured photograms made by artist Catalin Deer. Hey, other brands, if you're watching this, packets. Packets are really nice. We like packets. Books, we like books too. When those photogram looks walked to close the show, the LED columns on the runway lit up, showcasing the artwork alongside its printed use on these caftans. I'm not sure if I've ever seen that done before. It was a really effective way at creating immersion within the show. When a special look would walk out, the runway itself would adapt as much as it could to emphasize that look. Akris is an ultra-luxury brand that should make most luxury brands ask themselves, what are we even doing? The subtlety here should never be mistaken for dullness. You need to have it in your hands to fully understand the magic behind this brand. And for other guys who are tall with broad shoulders, there are some oversized pieces by them that you can find. Take them to a tailor and you're good. Okay, Chitose Abe Sacai time. We got a little bit of a preview of this up front, and it's going to be a really unusual season because it's all going to be dresses. Knowing Chitose Abe, there's no way it will just be a bunch of dresses. I feel like even if Chitose Abe was assigned to just make some normal clothes, I don't even know if she could do it. Innovation is in her bones. I have a bold prediction for you. I think that Sacai is poised to have a mainstream blow-up moment very soon. Chitose Abe is part of the most consistent club of designers, but among them, she strikes me as the least widely appreciated. For example, you may not notice that this entire show is made up entirely of dresses. Yes, this, those are all dresses. You may have mistaken these dresses for coats, tunics, jackets, maybe some sweaters. That is what Sacai is all about, grafting different types of garments to create a whole new genre. But this time, maybe Chitose's approach is playing with the overlap between the way that certain garments are typically worn, rather than combining different styles of coats. Off rip, that strikes me as an even more ambitious goal than usual, yet still very Sacai. How can I make a dress look like a bomber jacket? Or how can I make a dress look like a shirt layered with a jacket? That's inherently a question about proportions, which is no small way to grapple with design. I also wonder if the most helpful question to understanding this whole show is, where do the ideas of top and bottom even meet? Is that arbitrary? And how would a designer even do that? I mean, most garments sort of stake that claim about length for themselves. Trench coats are long, and pea coats are long, and bomber jackets are short, and suit jackets are short or medium length. Because really, how short can a dress be while still functioning as a dress, but while looking like a shirt? It has to be short enough, but obviously not too short. Top and bottom are arbitrary. A designer can in fact do that. Chitose Abe did it this season. And having that be a thought that guides the creation of a collection, it's incredible. Genius. Can I say something? Okay, you actually helped me understand this brand better with this review.
Thank you.
This is really good. And I know that some people here are this is a little bit of a reach. Bliss, you're just talking about the length of jackets and coats. But also, y'all, she's merging cropped jackets with dresses that are also jackets. And the scale of this outfit isn't just believable. It looks great. The concept is also being supported in the pants, or in this case, shoes. Chitose tries to ask us, where do shoes and pants meet? And her answer is poots. I don't want to say that. I don't want to say the word poots. But you may be thinking, Bliss, those are clearly pants, and I'm sorry to disappoint you, but they are actually boots. You're wrong. Many of them featured a stripe down the side of the poots, which makes them women's tuxedo poots, I guess. The kinds of garments that Abe is most inspired by seems to be classic garments that, when worn, imply a deep maturity in the wearer. It's hard to look at a traditional trench coat or a run-of-the-mill suit as exciting and fresh without the designer purposefully recontextualizing it. But Chitose's design language has managed to take those traditional elements, it keeps them traditionally themselves, but then it mixes and matches them until the traditionalism becomes almost subversive. Like, the clothes are so traditional and also so crazy that it almost makes a mockery of traditional clothing in the absolute best way possible. Like this look in particular, it reads at first as a trench over a coat, though again, we know that all of these are just dresses. When combined, a basic trench and a blazer become this beautiful sartorial genetic mutant. There are some gestural takes that look like the wearer is in the process of taking off jackets, or layering a blazer with a cape, or just putting a robe on to get cozy at home. It's always been undeniable that Chitose Abe chooses to design in hard mode. She gives herself no easy solutions. Each one of these garments looks like it would have been an absolute pattern monstrosity to execute. Yet it comes together so beautifully, and in my eye, it ends up looking effortless in the end. Chitose regularly attempts the most intense pattern cutting that I see on a regular basis. And her process and team seem to be super well oiled. Every collection in recent years has included over 40 looks. To me, the level of consistency, the exceptional ideas, the flawless execution, and the substance of her brand is just unparalleled. There's nothing like it in fashion. In so many ways, Chitose Abe's Sacai is unrivaled. I don't know if you are aware, but Helmut Lang is a New York brand, and we are in Paris, and we do not cover New York yet. But Peter Do, the creative director, his eponymous brand does show in Paris, and I like his work a lot. So we are going to go to his Helmut Lang showroom that is here in Paris. This will be our first time covering Helmut Lang in the Paris Fashion Week video. This is one of the first fashion brands that I ever got into. I have deep respect for the full heritage of what this house does. And I'm also really happy to say that, in my personal opinion, Peter Do is the single best creative director that they have ever had since Helmut himself. Congratulations, show was awesome. This is really good. I'm really curious to talk to you about uniforms specifically. As you're trying to build your own uniform here, what has been the approach? Have there been any things you're purposefully trying to stay away from? Any things that have to be included no matter what?
I mean, we didn't talk last season about the show, but the spring-summer 24 was sort of like the foundational season. We spent 3 months pretty much building the building blocks. So all the bodies or the block that you guys see here came from spring.
Gotcha.
So there's like the classic blazer, men for men and women, the flat front trouser, we call them the car trousers, the seat belt came from a body. So everything that you see, we spend months on the fit. So when we say classic, there's a specific fit that we refer to, and every season we build upon it. Like, let's say, for example, this is the oversized shirt. Now this is the apex seam, which is all the seam point to the center.
At the elbow?
Yeah, all the seam point toward the center, so we call them the apex. So every season, just like how Helmut used to do it, we evolve, but the blocks stay the same.
In a world where manufacturing happens all over the world, I was surprised to hear Peter talk about this even being possible nowadays. It seems only right that for Helmut Lang as a brand, fit is prioritized, enough to ensure that even if you only pick up a few things here and there, you will have that fit consistency, even if they make the classic shirt out of wool in the future or out of a nylon or anything else. And yes, to all the fellas watching, the bulletproof vest is back, baby. It is happening. But more importantly, you can now style it over a jacket. And about that, jackets are a part of this collection that Peter seems really, really proud of.
I don't know, I feel like a suit for me is sort of like something that I'm really drawn toward my own brand as well. Tailoring is something that I brought to Helmut. Because before I came, it was a very cut and sew kind of business in the past few years, which I'm trying to change because I feel like there had to be a balance, I think.
Yeah.
But I don't know, I'm really passionate about making a proper tailored garment, because for these things, it's like the invisible work that you don't see.
But you feel it when it's on.
Yeah. I mean, this is the proper suit, and then this under collar fell, it's fully canvas, shoulder pad, has a button here.
You shaped the chest.
Yeah, shape the chest. There's a button here. You can close it.
This has the like slight curve and like the. You're saying that like the canvas and horsehair stuff, like that gives it structure. Wow.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
That is insanely. Just in case anyone doesn't know, that is insanely rare and ready to wear.
So this is the same exact body that now have 2 iterations that fits exactly the same.
It was such a treat getting to look at this early Helmut Lang collection and talk through it with Peter himself. Cannot wait to see more. Retro-futuristic yet somehow completely modern. It's time for Courrèges. On the Paris Fashion Week calendar, Nicola is one of the best examples of someone who is going for commercial, consumable product, but still finds ways to tastefully push his audience into something that they haven't done before. Also, this is one of the only shows where the music is actually super important because Nicolas is often very involved, sometimes even making the music himself. De Felice isn't interested in fashion as art. He's pretty forthright about his intentions to make commercial clothes, but man, somehow on the road to great sales figures, he consistently reveals ideas that just rule. That's actually how we're going to handle this review. Simple as can be. We're just going to go through my favorite ideas in the show. When you work in the industry, you see a lot of trench coats. I don't really know why this is, but designers really, really love tweaking the trench coat. But this idea is just really... This is a channel first. I'm kind of afraid to jump into new territory here. I have never used the C word in any review that we have ever done. But these... They're chic. Oh shit! Chic? Chic? Don't you start using that filthy little word chic. Anyone who uses chic should be hung, drawn, and quartered. People who use that word should be spanked in public. Chic. I love that scene so fucking much. Congrats, dude. You got me to say chic. But really, this does feel like a futuristic version of a classic garment. And if we are talking about this, then we need to address the clit pocket. This works. I'm sorry it does. Here is something to consider if you do not believe me. I think the clit pocket is actually great. One of the things that fashion designers think about a lot that the general public might not consider is the angle of your arms while your hands are in their pockets. This is a way of communicating for designers, but usually it's not very complicated. Usually it's just that designers will say, oh, this angle of the arm just feels more elegant. So that makes it even more awesome when in a communication form that focuses on elegance, the jacket is just having them put their hand on their pelvis, like Ice Spice. When we interviewed De Felice about a year ago, he told us that there's a strict rule in their atelier that no one can just copy a pattern. All patterns must be redrafted by hand, even when referencing the archive. You can see that insistence on good pattern cutting demonstrated in just all of these jackets. Absolutely beautiful shapes. Mr. Courrèges himself was designing futuristic clothing so long ago that he was likely designing his work to just look like now. Like in the present, I think we are currently in what André Courrèges probably thought of as the future. So how do you, in the present, design clothing that still looks futuristic but makes sense for the Courrèges brand? So in this collection, Felice's answer depends a lot on geometric shapes, and there are some absolutely stunning ones here. The quality of this collection depends very little on any conceptual framework or story. It's mostly just an incredibly strong commercial collection of clothes. And I don't say that as a diss, I'm just emphasizing it because it is weird for me to praise what is pretty clearly a commercial collection here. But shit, dude, like if it looks this good, I am down. Plus, if you still need a little bit of conceptual fun, the center of the room appeared to be breathing. Absolutely beautiful visual. And that was because there was a white cloth over a hole in the floor where there were these massive fans that was blowing it up and down. It didn't really look like cloth, but it definitely was. Courrèges is becoming a hotter ticket, and it's because time and time again, they deliver. I mean, this is why he just got given the chance to design the upcoming JPG Couture show. This is Courrèges' best show to date. It is raining like crazy, and I'm getting under this umbrella. We're going up to Comme, Garçons. I am super excited. This is a highlight of the week. I really enjoyed the last season from Rei, and the great news about this brand is the unpredictability. We could change directions completely with no notice one season to the next. Or there could be a great deal of consistency for 5 straight years. You just really never know. As always, this is a great exercise in keeping my mind open to the possibilities of what fashion could even be defined by. Let's eliminate our expectations and go see. Anger. We'll fill in the details in a little bit, but in this section, just remember that this show is about anger. Let's talk about environmental storytelling in runway shows. That is just anything other than the clothes themselves that communicate something about the themes of the show. This can be things like the location of the runway show. It can come in the form of music. It can come in the form of model casting. It can also come in the form of instructing your models to do something. This can be anything from Lee McQueen instructing his models to act disturbed and crazy during the Voss show to whatever craziness this is. So environmental storytelling is not something that Comme des Garçons runway shows are known for. In fact, I would recommend Comme's runway history as a great case study of how to do minimal mise-en-scène in a runway format well. They just don't do a lot other than a bare runway and models. Okay, so this season was a complete departure from Comme des Garçons' norm. They did a lot of stuff with the models. To start, a model scrapes her wig on a light. I don't know if you can see that completely, but she bumps the light hard enough that the light fixture shifted. The lights were also purposefully hung a bit lower, so the models kind of had to navigate around them, and in one case, of course, bump it. That really brought home the theme of anger through frustration. So yeah, the models were instructed to express anger. One model did this weird double take thing. One model came out and actually leered at someone. And I know.
Big deal. Who cares? Oh my gosh, a model does one thing and people read all of this stuff into it.
Sorry, Comme doesn't do stuff like this. It is noteworthy when they do. Plus, the tone in the room during Comme des Garçons shows specifically is just wildly different. The best way I can describe it is that it often feels when you're in the room for those shows like the whole room is holding their breath throughout the whole show. Something like this really does come off as unsettling, which is a great segue into the theme of the show. Again, anger. The full show notes are actually pretty long for Comme des Garçons this season. They read, quote, "This collection is about my present state of mind. I have anger against everything in the world, especially against myself. Let's behold." First, I want us to check out the hair pieces. These are by Takio Arai. They've done the wigs for Comme for about 3 years now. We see these pieces from afar in all the shows, but I never get to be up close with them. And this kind of melted wig look, this has been a part of the Comme universe for as long as I can remember. The graphics for this collection are by an artist named Elisa Yoff. Her work adds a decidedly political tone with these constraining motifs that pretty clearly are about Ukraine and Palestine. And it can be really easy to get irritated at political messages in abstract art, like even when you agree with them. But this statement, to my eyes at least, really works with Comme des Garçons because the only consistent political message that they make is advocating for freedom. What a novel concept, right? And this season was particularly special because I got to come closest to these garments that I've ever been. In our recent breakdown of a Comme show from the 90s, we talked a great deal about process. We honestly don't have time to cover their full process in this segment, but for those who already know, there's not much I can add as far as commentary about the pattern cutting while seeing it up close in this way. My single biggest takeaway, honestly, from the showroom was that nothing here is really being faked. Comme has defined what attention to detail means for them and their team, and personally, I was really impressed. For example, this resin seemed to be poured by hand onto the textile and then was shaped onto a model or mannequin. I don't think I could ever co-sign anger as a fuel for creativity, but in the case of Comme des Garçons, you kind of can't argue with the results. They have decades of excellence fueled by rage. I hope Kawakubo-san knows that we love her a lot and that we would love her just as much if she found happiness as well. One of the most underrated designers that shows in Paris, Mame Kurogouchi. I'm excited about this for 2 reasons. One is that this is one of the most beautiful buildings in Paris that I've ever been inside. Absolutely stunning, stunning place. And more importantly, Mame Kurogouchi makes clothes either from the distant past or from the distant future. I'm still trying to figure it out. I don't know which one. I feel like through most of the previous collections designed by Maiko Kurogouchi, there hasn't been that one look. I have always personally observed well-considered, beautiful collections of clothes. But this season, there is a definite look, and it's the opener. It is so good. And Okay, you know what's crazy? I'm about to get like really in the weeds here. Buckle up. When a designer makes an outfit from separates, like in this case, it's a sweater and a pair of jeans, and they put that on a runway, it's usually great, but it wouldn't translate to real life very effectively. This is why a lot of street style photography and a lot of like influencer photos just sort of don't feel convincing. Because it's like, sure, I guess this head to toe runway look looks great, but this would look goofy if you were anywhere other than just my phone screen. Okay, so despite this being a runway look, literally the first runway look, and despite the top and the bottom matching perfectly, this is such a great candidate for a real life outfit that ensures that you're the best dressed person in a 10-mile radius. And it combines what I like about Mame generally. It's a combination of texture, how the color is handled, and the point of view. Okay, now let's talk about Kurogouchi-san's point of view. The inspiration for these collections usually starts with the Japanese decorative arts, which Maiko has a small collection of and are usually on display at the runway show. When I first discovered this brand, they were fully in their bamboo basket era, and we're now 2 collections into their ceramics inspiration. We can see little references to this through the use of kintsugi. You remember this is the thing where you repair ceramics with gold so you can emphasize and celebrate the object's use and its imperfections. We can also see the type of adornment that's most often seen in ceramics through elements like the lace of this tunic. And there's lots of ceramic-like motifs in the prints this season as well, both on sweaters, on the silky shirts, and a few other garments too. I would attribute the awesome textures of this show to the ceramics theme as well, but Maiko has always had great visual textures in her shows. I'm thrilled to say we have a Margiela reference, and it's a Margiela Hermès reference. This item of clothing is called a veilleuse that was part of Martin's mission to create perfect clothes when he was at Hermès. It's meant to be a double-faced cashmere piece that allows you to just shrug it off and tie the sleeves around your waist when you go inside. The idea being that it's kind of a elegant evolution of a jacket. Maiko takes this now classic idea and alters it with her signature lines up near the neck. That curve is very distinctly Kurogouchi. It's very beautiful. Okay, it is time now to talk about Enfants Riches Déprimés. If you are not familiar with this brand, I have great news. This is the best season that they've ever had. We're going to take a lot of time to look through this. Be patient, it's worth it. Henri Alexander Levy demonstrated this season that his brand has reached a new milestone. ERD is maturing. They recently opened a rare and exotic book and record store called Anti-Public Library. They serve American coffee, wine, tea, sake, and I'm not joking, olives. But the progress on ERD can be most clearly seen by examining their old work. There's nothing wrong with these seasons, and the numbers don't lie. These are the collections that got ERD famous. But despite Goth Girl Sucks Soul Through Dick being funny and cool, there just wasn't a lot of world building going on at the time yet. Fast forward to the past few years, I've sensed that there's something there, but whatever it is very unorthodox and hard to articulate. So now, here, I'm going to attempt to articulate it. Do you remember the first time that you snuck out of your parents' house? Do you remember the first time that you did something truly, actually dangerous? Have you ever unexpectedly come across a dead body? ERD takes moments like those, stretches them way out from 10 seconds to 10 minutes, and builds out a place and fictional characters to populate the world of our most extreme experiences. Before the show, we arrived at a parking garage in Paris. It's very practically built, but feels like it was designed for runway shows specifically. Though these inclines are pretty steep, it would be an absolute nightmare in heels. On our brief walk through the garage to get to our seats, we see a vintage Rolls-Royce with no wheels propped up on cinder blocks. The car was guarded by an 8-year-old valet. Hard. There were garbage cans with active fires in them, and as we made our way up the multiple stories of the garage, we encountered a total of like 15 luxury vintage cars, mostly Rolls Royces. And I'm not a car guy at all, but I feel like this move would not have worked if it was a bunch of brand new Benzes and Rolls. I think it needed to be vintage cool cars. The first look emerges in the form of a car driven by Lucas Fox, who is the drummer from Motorhead. In the passenger seat is a young model. The driver stops at the top of the parking garage, the passenger door opens, and the guy emerges as look number 2. the car, I think of the car as look number 1. It set an unbelievably ominous tone to the runway. Look number 2 was also outstanding. Beautifully distressed jacket that featured a chainmail shirt underneath. This unbelievable opening to the show is likely a reference to the film Christian F., which, if you haven't seen it, you should probably watch it, though fair warning, it is very, very difficult to get through. Brief summary. It's about a young girl. She's like 14, 15. She starts like going to cool discotheques. She meets this cute boy. They sort of like fall in love a little bit. The guy is a heroin addict. She becomes a heroin addict. And eventually her life just starts falling apart as she gets deeper and deeper into her addiction. The reason this is so hard to watch is because she's literally a child. And like watching a kid like shake and throw up from heroin withdrawals it's a little difficult to get through. The hardest single scene in the entire movie is the pretty dark scene where she has the internal realization that she is willing to start hooking for cash so she can support the addiction because she's been kicked out of her house. And that scene is the specific one that this show seems to be referencing at the beginning. And look, if you're new to ERD, they do not reference things like this in order to glorify them or to be like, this is cool, you should do it too. It's likely referenced for the same reasons that Raf Simons referenced this movie in his fall 2018 show, which was exclusively just about the decline part of Christian F. Artists just tend to talk about tragic human stories. Okay, so why are we talking about this? Many Americans haven't seen Christian F., but every European alive has seen that movie because they were made to watch it unedited at school, usually around 8th grade. That honestly would have fucked me up completely. There is no way I would be the same if I was made to watch that movie in 8th grade. And there is a lot of precedence for this being referenced in runway shows. Like I said, Raf referenced it before. Gucci under Alessandro Michele also referenced the famous hallway scene in one of their ad campaigns. This is a mega influential film in the fashion world. If you are still skeptical that this is a reference to the CF movie, the undisputable proof is the invitation, which comes in the form of a book. This might be the most painstaking invitation I've ever received for a fashion show. Okay, so the novelization of Christian F. was translated into over 20 languages. It was an incredibly popular book worldwide. One of those translations was in modern Hebrew. The print run was pretty small. They didn't think it would be successful, and then it really, really was, to the point that now the original copies of it, the only Hebrew copies, resell for about $150 on eBay, so they recently reprinted it. Okay, so ERD did their own reprint of this book, verbatim. The only things that they changed about the book was writing Enfants riches Déprimés on the back in a font that I think is supposed to look a little bit like Hebrew. They also did that on the spine, and then Henri Alexander Levy's name appears on the copyright page. Oh, I forgot there's also this. They added this as well. Through an object, literally just one object. They don't write a literal story with a beginning, middle, and end, but they sort of get your brain to write the loose outline of a story for them. That's what really good world building does. Back to the show, Henri has told us in the past that the individual looks on the runway are meant to be seen like the color and texture in an abstract painting. There's not really a reason why something is such and such a way other than to grant it visual balance and to have the mood that he set out for. And this is an apt comparison too, because Henri paints for real. When we did our hour-long sit-down with him recently, he described himself as an artist first and a designer second. And the only reason I bring up the abstract painting thought is because it further reinforces how we can most usefully look at these runway collections. Sitting here and just saying, okay, I'm going to catalog all of these little doodads that are hanging off of this guy, and we're going to cobble together a storyline for this character. I just don't think any of that's going to be productive. You're supposed to experience it as a feeling to a certain extent. Now, that said, some of these characters do have literal elements to them, like the cuffs and the bracelets that are found above the elbow in these looks. That's likely a reference to a tourniquet. And the spoon bracelet in this look, that doubles down on the drug paraphernalia. And there's a level of detail in the mise-en-scène that I just haven't seen in many other runways. The kid with the Royce on cinder blocks, there was literally a glass of milk just hanging out on the hood of the car. One of the vintage rolls that was on the same level as my seat had a stuffed animal stuffed onto where the Rolls angel figure should be. And the same teddy bears that often sit outside of Parisian cafes as a tourist photo trap, those sat neglected in the back of a 60s Mercedes. And again, can I explain what this means specifically? Not really, but it speaks to excellent world building. And further on that, the characters don't need to make sense in a traditional sense in this show. There don't need to be justifications for why each of them are here. I've started thinking about this similar to how David Lynch handles costuming in his movies. Like, why is a character who is a Hollywood film producer dressed like a cowboy? Why does this guy have powder on his face? Those questions don't really have answers because this isn't question asking time. This is watch a movie and feel emotions time. Why does this guy have a sterling silver hammer? Same reason. That's kind of how I determine how much I like ERD looks within a single show. I just ask, how convincing is this person as a character in the world of this collection? Like a fencing jacket, arm warmers, vintage painting, sweat stains? Do I know what's going on here? Nope, not at all. But my brain started filling in guesses immediately. It's the same thing with this stunning all-leather look. Each element is simultaneously reinforcing and complicating this character. And my single favorite from the whole show is this Angel of Death type look. I've actually thought about this character just about constantly since we left Paris. This is truly, truly terrifying. We recently sat down with Henri for a very long interview. This is the first interview of its kind, and I'm really proud of how it turned out. If you're on the fence or if you're confused about ERD as an idea, I strongly recommend that you watch that interview. It is available now on the Patreon along with dozens of other exclusive videos. I know personal preferences aren't really like a part of what we do here, but as far as Daniela and I are concerned, this is kind of the most exciting show of the week, most consistently. Issey Miyake by Satoshi Kondo. Reviewing shows like this is like a puzzle where we have to just look at everything extremely closely and try to unpack references, and thank goodness for show notes because we probably couldn't bring you all of the information without them. Let's go see. We're both on both cameras, yeah? Go with me here. Before there was clothing, there was still getting dressed. But like when you hear the term historic clothing, you're like, okay, yeah, like epaulettes, bustles, peignets, this kind of thing. Even before that stuff, there was still the idea of getting dressed. Satoshi Kondo takes us to that time in human history, but of course, as always, through the codes of his deeply optimistic and modern maison. All right, so this isn't a visual one-to-one, but this collection is full of these drapey, like Dune Part 2 Zendaya has dialogue this time looks. And there are some of these monastic and like pleated thaub looks. We remember that thaubs are these things, the clothing part of what this guy's wearing. So there's something of these monastic and kind of pleated thaub looks, but overall, these skirts and these many layered looks are referencing a time when human beings would get dressed just by wrapping themselves haphazardly in a piece of cloth. APOC. So yes, we're talking about the most impressive technical achievement that has ever emerged out of Issey Miyake, the company. But we need to take a quick detour. The APOC concept, a piece of cloth, is just a big length of cloth from which you can cut out and customize a full outfit's worth of clothes. How long or short do you want the sleeves to be? Do you like crew socks or long socks? Like with the APOC concept, you can have meaningful control over the design of your clothes. The designer has just provided you with an unbelievably cool framework to do that, which also photographs really well. You can sort of think of it as like the clothing version of an over-engineered Japanese mechanical pencil. The original APOC debuted in the spring of 1999, but it was intended to be introduced as a new concept for the brand, which is a pretty cool thing that Issey Miyake, the company, does, where they're able to look at a great idea that they had and know that behind that idea there could be multiple years of work. I would love to be able to show you footage from that show, but it's really hard to come by, and museums own most of the original APOC lengths bolts of fabric. APOC really holds this like legendary status in contemporary fashion history. So APOC sort of went into hibernation for a while, and it is now back. So Issey Miyake, the company, is reviving the APOC concept. It's now branded as APOC Able, and it is led by Yoshiyuki Miyamai. This guy, super cool. So there was the Issey Miyake show, Issey Miyake showroom, and then the APOC Able like exhibition that they put on. And I really enjoyed going to the APOC Able exhibit that was hosted during Fashion Week because they were able to showcase all of the different ideas that you can achieve with APOC, such as reducing fabric waste by over 50% when the clothing is made in this system. fucking crazy. Also, the exhibition showed us how certain pleats are made and activated through the use of heat. And I feel like using the format of almost like a children's museum to demonstrate these ideas for everyone was really helpful, because I've shown this video in the past to show how Issey Miyake pleats are made, but ultimately this is a animated video that doesn't really show us much. I realized that I was working with like a panini press essentially, but like using that item really did help me to understand how this stuff comes to be a little bit better. Oh my gosh, they're literally right there. Yeah, wait, hand me that. Thank you. This is what I made at the APOC Able thing. It was pretty cool. Yeah, other one, thank you. So they've left samples like this on the chairs at runway shows in the past to kind of show off what they look like. This one, apparently I'm supposed to put through the wash to make it a little bit softer. It's a tad bit stiff, but wouldn't be like uncomfortable if I was wearing it as cloth. And if you're struggling to see the application here beyond just making cool clothes at Issey Miyake, it's an innovation that takes the most direct route to sustainability, which is it wastes less. Because it wastes less, it becomes more cost effective. And so it is the type of sustainability practice that companies are super in favor of, because no one likes wasting money. I would love to see this type of idea get iterated and adopted more widely in the industry. So returning back then to Kondo-san's show this season, what is the difference between fabric and clothing? Within fabric, there's this endless potential of garments to be made. It's like fabric is full of all these different ideas of what it could become and how it could be cut and transformed. And if you think that's a stretch, I have spoken to many designers where they often talk about the first step of the design process is just feeling textiles. You're just rubbing different fabrics between your fingers, trying to figure out what that fabric wants to be. And some designers, it really does end up feeling something and saying, this wants to be a skirt. But for this collection, I can't help but think that Kondo looked at just how cool APOC is as a concept and may have thought, what if there was no potential inside the fabric? What if you just use the fabric? It's like the reverse of APOC. Instead of there being so many garments and so much potential inside that one length of fabric, the fabric itself can make up the whole garment. Instead of optimizing pattern piece placement, you just wrap yourself up in the textile. And that right there, that is why Issey Miyake is just the most exciting brand that's showing right now in Paris. It's not that there was no pattern cutting. I mean, like, clearly this incredible look was not just poofed into existence with some fabric squares and a dream. He used the idea of no pattern cutting to guide the pattern cutting. Satoshi Kondo and his team are becoming known for setting such ambitious and varied conceptual goals. But what this show and this concept that underlies it tells me is that Satoshi Kondo loves squares. We know that they've inspired his work before, like in this show here. I'm excited to see if squares is maybe becoming a motif for the house generally. Issey Miyake can represent both miraculous engineering and perfect simplicity. It does seem like the best things in life manage to combine both. The early slot on Saturday morning of Paris Fashion Week can only mean one thing: Junya Watanabe. Junya shows are always accompanied by a single sentence. This season, it was, quote, "I want to express the beauty of the contrast between clothes and sculptures." Something we consistently hear from fashion designers is that they love comparing their work to sculpture. And I can see why. Ancient marble sculptors focused their efforts around how to render the human body in the most beautiful way. Even though clothing the body is obviously pretty different, a lot of designers feel the need to make the human body in their own vision. And the best way they know how is through clothes. Much like fashion, knowing how to sculpt involves knowledge of some geometry. In fashion, you have to know that a cut with a very acute angle is how you create a dart. You have to learn how to accommodate the human body, shoulders, hips, knees. But as you know, fabric is flat. It's 2D. But okay, real question. When a bolt of fabric gets turned into clothes, does it switch from being a two-dimensional object to being a three-dimensional object? Is it 2D with some 3D elements? Is it fully 2D still? So these questions could be why Junya went full sculptural on these triangular prism pyramid opening shapes. He's using them the way that a sculptor uses an additive process like with clay. Any of these could just be an exaggerated dart or maybe just the largest ever shoulder. But Junya said more and took it to the extreme. And I mean, like, not to get caught up in the weeds here, but how do you turn something that's two-dimensional into a 3D shape? Like, have you ever tried to wrap a basketball for Christmas? That shit is not easy. And it's because paper is a 2-dimensional object and a ball is a 3-dimensional object, and paper just doesn't have the properties to take on a 3D shape in a simple way. Also related and still in the weeds, have you heard of a Mobius strip?
Do we want to do a presentation? Do you want me to? Because I can just get a piece of paper and make you one.
You can just make a Mobius strip out of printer paper? Are you a witch? Are you a good witch?
I don't know.
Fellas, get you a wife that can make a Mobius strip. Did you for real make one?
Mobius strip, normal loop.
How many holes does a straw have?
That's exactly what this is about.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah. So like, okay, this is a normal thing, right? It has an outside and then it has an inside, right? Okay, so that one does not matter because that's not in this collection. Okay, I am told, and I assume that this is just gonna happen, but we're gonna go ahead and do it anyway, that I can just draw, this is a Mobius strip, that I can just draw a line and I can just keep going with the same line without picking up the marker, and that it's gonna just come all the way around. Okay, I had to pick it up because I promise, the line is continuing. And yeah, it literally hits the same line. It covers every part of it. How is this possible? I just did it and it doesn't make any sense. But real quick, one other cool thing about the Mobius strip versus just a normal stupid circle is that this adds such more like organic volume to it. This seems like if you manipulate it in a couple of different ways, or really just the way that it already is, it kind of creates this like natural volume to it, which is really beautiful. And just look at how much volume that half turn creates in this look that is very literally a fashion Mobius strip. That way of working is this added dimension, like literally, to Junya's well-known sculptural work on the women's wear side of his brand. Junya made 3D out of 2D, and the belts that decorated the looks in this show are a great representation of that same Mobius strip idea. Like, look at how these belt pants are twisting and creating just volume all over the look. And what if that transition between 2 and 3D is the basis of these padded moto looks? The best runway show I've ever seen in person was a Junya show from last year, and the similarities are there in terms of the theme. It's a bunch of different parts of moto clothing made into coats and capes. These tent looks are a great example of this added dimensionality. They're all made out of 2D material, but end up forming a crystalline structure to support a suit jacket or a few moto jackets, or in the case of this look, it's just a belt that grows into support beams. Junya has made it where fabric literally takes on the shape of scaffolding. My guess is that Junya views the beauty between clothing and sculpture as this transitional place between 2 and 3D, like the middle ground between a hand-drawn triangle and this fucking cape. Junya has been on an absolute kill streak lately with the women's collections. I cannot wait to see where this goes next. But okay, Zomer time. This is their second show. This is one of the strongest starts to a brand that I've ever seen. They have a really strong command over color, and at least to me, the most important part is that they are not depending completely on polyesters and plastics and stuff in order to get those really, really bright colors. They prefer to do most stuff in wool, from what I've seen. I'm really excited to see how this gets styled on the runway because Imru, one half of Zomer, is a professional stylist. He's been a stylist for years. He styles all of the Botter shows among a ton of other brands. The other half of Zomer, Daniel, works at Louis Vuitton under Pharrell, and he says that Louis Vuitton has a great work-life balance culture so that he's able to also run his own brand and give enough time to both things and be able to like manage both and without going crazy. It's also an excuse to go to the Palais de Tokyo. I'll always take that. Before we dive into the clothes, I just want to emphasize how brilliant Zomer's communication strategy has been. For their first show, they photographed children dressed up to be different fashion icons. Anna Wintour, Rei Kawakubo, Michelle Lamy, Lucien Pages. This season, they did a spot the difference game on Instagram. And outside the fact that this is just a great idea, it adds so much context and depth to the Zomer universe at a time when most emerging brands are struggling to create any coherent identity at all. I have never felt so sure that a young brand has solid priorities. Everything at Zomer seems to revolve around the clothes being prioritized first. Zomer literally means summer in Dutch. Daniel and Imru both grew up in the land of tulips, and this season they are deeply inspired by them. But it's considered. They didn't just make a tulip repeat print and slap it onto a shirt. The shape of this skirt just looks unmistakably like a 3D shape of a tulip bulb. And the translation of the way that wind passes through tulip petals that parallels the movement of these skirts. Incredibly sharp, perfectly simple idea. When you look at this other leather skirt, the style lines are clearly a simplified tulip silhouette, just front and center. One of my favorite things to say about a collection is that there was a theme in the pattern cutting itself. I love being able to tell you that. It's my favorite thing. We got to see a tiny preview of this collection at Dover Street Market, Paris, and something that the staff told us was that when trying to come up with a red thread for the collection, in a fashion context, red thread could refer to a repeating motif across multiple garments in a collection to make the collection look like a single unit. It's basically just cohesion. And in order to do that, they very literally decided to use red thread. Contrast stitching has kind of been done to death, but for a brand that's so playful and attempting to capture childhood, the red thread idea just works super well here. It honestly kind of reminds me of those I Spy books, which if Zomer has never looked into that, I'm not a designer, I'm not telling anybody what to do, but it seems like it would fit with the brand really well. And we can't not talk about these shoes. They're perfect. Those are Daniela's words. She's obsessed with these things. I like them too, but Daniela could not stop talking about these damn shoes.
I love them.
The sound was crazy.
It really was, yeah. We can't not talk about the shoes. They're perfect. I like the way they look, but I love the way they sound. Yes, play it again. I like these ones because they remind me of macaroni art, which is fully tied up in the immaturity label, but it's so wonderfully recontextualized here. Glass was found elsewhere in the collection through these custom corsets or glass bodices maybe. One of them looked like a cow udder, and the other one looked like the bronze orbs of Lucio Fontana, which was another inspiration for the collection. Most notably, this look is a literal walking painting of his. And what's cool is that Fontana pioneered a art movement called spatialism. He was slashing his paintings in an attempt to create something 3D from a two-dimensional work. Seeing the artwork itself brought to life as a dress makes it such a great representation of the ideas behind the spatialist movement that Fontana was known for creating. Unfortunately, that spatialist way of working was never really solidified by other artists during Fontana's lifetime. The process of how artists create art inspires Zomer's work directly. They looked at Fontana's work, and what they loved about it was how he blended 2D and 3D. Zomer ran with this idea, creating an incredibly impressive and deeply conceptual collection. When designers are usually inspired by an artist, the artist's work is usually inspiring the vibe. Designers don't usually help realize the ultimate championed vision of a now deceased artist. And this is only round 2 for Zomer. Honestly, this brand's foundation is so incredibly solid. I'm mega impressed. Is Walk Up Undercover, you on? Yeah. So we've been to a few undercover shows at this point, and I was extremely excited the first time that we went. I somehow am more excited for this one than I was the first time that I ever got to do it. Jun released an unbelievable show last time. Oh, that is not our car. Cool. Jun released an unbelievable show last time. It was probably his best show in 5 years. And we do know for a fact that Undercover was much more in demand this season than it was last season because it was just so damn good. There's an old piece of wisdom that says that women will always feel like they never have the right clothes because women are expected to be so many different, often contradictory things. Be a mother. No, be a good mother. Be hot, be educated, be free-spirited, be organized, don't be gross, whatever that means. Be a caregiver, be a leader, be a respectful daughter, be an excellent wife, be the right kind of sister. You should be a thoughtful cousin. It's like society is asking women why they look like they haven't showered in 2 days, but society also doesn't understand what a keratin treatment is. Okay, put a pin in that. We're going to come back to it. Zoom out. Undercover has been jumping all over the place lately. The women's wear has always been good, but as far as the wider fashion media is concerned, it's been quiet for Undercover women's. There have been no showstoppers. Okay, last season was a barn burner for Undercover. I said it was their best show in years. I still stand by that. You remember this, right? It's with the glowing butterfly terrarium dresses. It was that show. Okay, so when the show opened this season, there was no music and a model emerged very quietly. You can even see in the video that most folks here don't even realize that it has started. I myself started filming late because I just didn't realize the show had started. I don't have an interpretation or an analysis about this, but it's worth noting that Undercover went from being extremely theatrical to being very quiet and subdued in one season. Back to the first model. She is wearing what, at a glance, appears to be an extremely normal outfit. Just spaghetti-strap tank over some jeans. Then we get a better view, and we see that it's actually a jumpsuit. We then see that she's carrying a jacket that's kind of a trompe-l'oeil. Like, most of it seems to be this white cotton jersey, but there's sections that are a brown cardigan. So I guess it's not really like tricking us into thinking it's a cardigan like a trompe-l'oeil would. It's just kind of both things at the same time. It's a similar motif near the bottom of her jeans as well. The second look drives this point home perfectly. We know what we're in for now. The metaphor is clear. The clothes are trying to be multiple things at once. A pair of trousers and a t-shirt becomes a jumpsuit. About a minute into the show starting, we hear the audio of a poem coming out of the speakers at a high volume, but the speaker's voice itself is very soft.
As always, she wakes up just before the alarm goes off.
It's Wim Wenders reading his poem. It's called Watching a Working Woman. The poem is long. When printed out, it covers about 4.5 pages. It talks about a single woman with a good job and a young son. She makes enough money for both of them to have comfortable lives together. And the poem just plainly describes their daily routine from the woman's perspective. In the poem, for this woman to be the person that she is supposed to be, she has to be a lot of different things at once. Some of those things, like we said, are contradictory. But as a result of being multiple things at once, the woman of the poem, and all women really, become something greater than the sum of the roles they're expected to play. It kind of transforms them into this new type of woman. In the beginning of the show, the analogy is pretty straightforward. Her clothes knew that she needed trousers and a t-shirt, and so her single garment is trying with everything it has to be both things for both of the woman's needs. But as we move through more and more looks of the show, we see that same mentality sort of produces a new genre of clothing. As a result of being pulled in many different directions, this woman and these clothes have both become this beautiful new thing. And I mean, I want to be clear here. There's nothing cool about the disadvantages that women have to live under. You're obviously welcome to make your own interpretation, but I don't think the poem or this show are encouraging any weird trad wife narrative. I think Jun and his team looked around them at the women in their lives and just said, I don't know what circumstances or reality made you this way, but whatever happened, I'm just very grateful to have you here exactly as you are now. And I mean, something I want to emphasize, this is a show about women, obviously, because it's Women's Week, but this show is about the lives of modern women, much more so than just a collection of clothes for women. This show is about women and was designed by a guy, and it features a poem that was written in red by a guy, and it is now being reviewed and analyzed by another guy. Sometimes with the patriarchy, all you can do is just identify that it's there. Okay, we need to stop everything for a second here. Look, I'm going to move closer so it's clear that it's definitely time to pay attention right now. I'm about to show you a short edited version of an interview that I did with a fashion designer named Geoffrey B. He is going to say a lot of stuff like this.
There's great, and our job in the 21st century is to attain more than great.
I am comfortable sitting here as a fashion critic and telling you that Geoffrey B. is the most underrated fashion designer on earth. Is he the best? Best can mean a lot of different things. Instead of just pouring out accolades towards the guy, I'm just going to let you listen to his words. As always, we couldn't include everything on the video here, so the full 70-minute interview is available on the Patreon. It is, I'm told by my patrons, the best interview that we have ever put out. I strongly encourage you to go to the Patreon and check it out. But in the meantime, here's Geoffrey.
My name is Geoffrey B. and I've been making clothes for about 4.5 decades.
And this collection seems like it's one that you are particularly proud of. Could you just walk me through the basic idea of what you're doing from a fabrics technology perspective, since that's usually your approach?
Well, this collection we call extensionism. It's what we call an advanced research collection, but there are points when we want to just take some time and develop all the stuff that's totally new that we've never done before. And that's what we define as a research collection. Part of our approach has been very, very long term. So we don't work with a lot of suppliers. We don't work with a lot of fabric companies. We only have about 5 or 6 fabric makers. They're the best in the world at what they do. wonderful natural bone buttons made for us by Claudia and Cinzia Fontana. They are what I firmly believe they're the greatest living button makers in the world. And we still have an opportunity for them to continue to create things. We're very transparent. When we work with great people, we don't have a problem of saying they did the button. We unequivocally have the highest percentage component of handwork of any of the brands.
Oh, of course, yeah. No
Now, fully handmade, fully hand-sewn clothes we do, but we don't show them here, and it's a different line that we have. This wonderful collar here.
That's beautiful. How does it, is it sewn down?
Automatica, snaps. But look at how they're sewn.
Oh my gosh, you have 3 stitches on each corner of
Yeah,
the things.
and these are hand-sewn buttonhole style stitches. For us, it's a shirt collar that you've never seen before,
Absolutely.
even in museums. And that's what we mean by research cut. We're trying to do clothes that have never been made before. This is a beautiful cloth. And this is coming from Luigi Parisotto. And what Luigi does is Luigi, for us, is the best research fabric maker on the planet. Now, research fabric maker, what does that mean? And with Luigi, what we do is we can choose yarn, we can choose structure, and we can make fabric from scratch. What we've done here is we've combined pure silk yarn and pure cashmere yarn, and they're put together in a structure. Now, what happens is the fabric doesn't come to us looking like this. It's pretty flat, it's woven. All this type of modulation and texture is being done in our own GBS super workrooms at Cavarzere. What you can do is a classic seersucker effect, and if you put them in some sort of bath, the yarns may react differently. Maybe the silk yarn shrinks more than the cashmere yarn.
And it creates a tension throughout the whole.
And so what it does is they're all intertwined together. So half of it is pulling, the other one's not, and that's what creates the molo, as they call it in Italian. That's what creates the waves. Now this is as a design, this is also important. I mean, this is basically, you know, like a pullover mountaineering, you know, fleece type of thing, right? It's very simple. It's even got the gussets in the back to aerate the arms.
Oh, wow.
Okay, so this is sort of like modern Patagonia, North Face stuff, but done in a silk and cashmere with all natural material. We are putting pressure on the big luxury brands. We enjoy the healthy competition. I'm going to constantly argue that they can raise the price as much as they want, but they can't do the product because they're not doing what's required to be able to do the product. This is 170 gram per meter pure Alishan cashmere. It's
So
the
that
lightest.
would be a Super 170 is what that would be?
No, it's more woven along a Super 220, Super 230.
Holy shit, Geoffrey.
Okay.
That is crazy.
And it's the lightest ever woven by man.
Oh my gosh, it is. This is fully 3D.
These yarns haven't been colored. They are the natural color coming from the sheep.
What is
You
this?
can almost still smell the farm. It's a reproduction of the weave structure, the fabric design, that was also woven by hand by the Franciscan monks back in the 13th century.
Again, absolutely crucial that you go watch the full interview. It is live on the Patreon right now. Go check it out. As always, I don't think anyone is surprised by this, but we went to a lot of presentations, runway shows, and showrooms this season. We want to talk about as much of it as we possibly can, so this is lightning round. We're going super fast. Gotta go fast. Starting with Coperni. It was our first show with them, and it involved a drive out of Paris and into Aubervilliers so that they had just enough room for the sci-fi alien showdown. Details that made me happy to see were the backwards-facing long press-on nails and this bag made out of aerogel? I don't know. I'm more of a liberal arts kind of guy. But okay, the best way to describe this collection is, you know about the no Wi-Fi zone in West Virginia? It's in a place called Green Bank. It has like a population of 140 people, and there is no wireless communication anywhere in the city. The cuntiest person who lives there, that's this show. Vaquera continues to improve season over season. There's been a huge leap of improvement in the finishings on the runway this time around, and they've used this polish to great effect. The future product from this collection just leaps off the models. This new precision in the clothing only enhances the effect of Vaquera's kind of chaotic styling, which, while always meant to look haphazard, this feels very purposeful now. We can see what Vaquera wants to do much more clearly. Anrealage introduced... Actually, hang on. Anrealage introduces us to friendly, inanimate objects inspired by the anime Doraemon. It's pretty clear that the oversized volumes in the human clothing is meant to be juxtaposed with the clothed objects and is for sure a play on the idea of one size fits all. Time for Duran Lantink, one of the coolest names to say out loud in fashion. LVMH Prize nominee Duran Lantink has been blowing up because of his voluminous work in recent seasons. His padded and cozy forms fit well into this ski-themed collection, but a detail that really stuck out to me is this skirt with a sheer panel in the middle where you can see how high on the leg those thigh-high socks actually are. I would love to see more of this in his work. It was raining like absolute crazy when we arrived to our first show with Victoria Beckham, who had 2 shows this season to fit all the people who wanted to come. We were introduced to her work, and I was kind of shocked to find a whole lot of experimentation here. Like, jacket shoulders sat outside the body of the model, and while it's kind of a nod to holding your clothes up to your body when deciding what to wear, it almost looked like you're like hugging your suit-wearing partner from behind a little bit, right? The piping motif in this show was best executed in this dress with very purposeful hip cutouts. Thank you, Posh Spice, very cool. Stefano Gallici's second collection for Demeulemeester was set to a haunting composition performed live on a modular synthesizer setup. It's not an Andy show if the room isn't all black and if the looks weren't predominantly black themselves, but the house's romantic motifs like these tendrils kind of remind us of the brand's complex relationship with challenging gravity, also seen in some of the specific cuts this season. We had a lot of drafty trains swooshing as the models turned, and here's some really beautiful footage of just that event. Casablanca is best known for embodying the most exciting parts of history and cleverly making them seem new, this time inspired by ancient Greece. The opening 3 looks appear to be translating Greek statues by keeping the biggest strokes, like elongating the body and playing with the idea of drapery on statues or just togas in general. But did you notice the hands? How could you not? The conductor, okay, this is so sick. The conductor for the dance troupe was positioned at the perfect place for our seats so we could see him and the whole setting and the runway at the same time. So historically, the white statues that we see in museums now were once painted very elaborately, and the primary color palette of the show reminds us of that fact, even showing us painted columns and colorful classic ornamentation as prints and treatments. Finally, I spoke to Alexandra Golovanov, who channels the softness of her entirely cashmere brand into her current color palette. These soft but vibrant colors are fixtures of the no-nonsense daily wear type of garments. Also, I love covered buttons a lot, but I think I may love covered cashmere buttons the most. Lightning round ended. It's over. I am just gonna let the next segment introduce itself to you.
Haha! Welcome to Noir Kei Ninomiya's show.
Am I reaching here? Is that the guy from Smash? I am almost positive that's the guy from Smash. First look. Out first are 2 dresses that vaguely resemble a bead maze. You remember bead mazes from the doctor's office when you were a child? And look, I know, okay, I had to kick away the Mobius strips from the Junya Watanabe review. The whole point of Noir Kei Ninomiya is that no references, no inspiration, nothing. We have gotten really good at finding out what those points of inspiration actually are. Because am I reaching with that? I don't feel like I'm reaching. He seems to like this loopish look. Kei Ninomiya has experimented with this sort of texture in the past. Ninomiya also loves creating looks that completely engulf the wearer. Here are some past examples of that. And if these are meant to be like random obsolete cables, then it is great to finally see that the sad bag of useless cables from the early 2000s has finally found a use. I threw out my sad bag of old cables about 18 months ago, have not thought about it one time since then. give yourself permission to throw that bag away or turn it into a dress. This show is titled Iridescence, and here Kei Ninomiya is taking another stab at playing with the reflection of light. In fact, we've seen a pretty extreme and beautiful use of iridescence before in his Fall 23 show, where Look 1 entered the room before it entered the room. These bouncing speckles of light introduced us to what ended up being an incredible show. Something to emphasize specifically is that unlike the work of his mentor, Rei Kawakubo, Kei Ninomiya's use of color doesn't come with this simmering rage underneath all of it. The exuberance in this show started with beautifully painted feathers that bounced as the models walked. This colorful look played with patches of pastel faux fur, and even the hairstyling for many of the looks appeared to be painted clay planters and like other small ceramics that had been broken into a handful of pieces and then embedded into the model's hair. And for all the cheeriness of this show, Noir Kei Ninomiya was not without its beautifully discordant audio and looks, which in the middle of the event became much more prominently warped, but again, never threatening. It sounded kind of like the batteries dying on an animatronic toy. The middle part of this show was based on school uniforms, except I don't know whose teacher is making them wear at least 7 ties. We do see this in Kai's work, a theme of a lot of the same exact motif, kind of for dramatic effect. It has been long established that a major theme of Kai's work is not sewing anything, finding alternatives for putting things together. Sometimes they melt the stitches, sometimes they do chain link, sometimes they do knots. There's all these different ways, and it's impossible to never stitch anything, but this way of thinking has led Ninomiya into some really innovative places. Like such as this gigantic knotted or woven look that always seems to be a part of his shows. And honestly, something that I really deeply appreciate about Kai's work is that he just embraces wackiness. Most fashion designers are so worried that they won't be taken seriously that they overuse this dramatic tone. There's booming classical music, or there's this dark, moody room. Those are like the usual choices. And if that actually is the tone of the clothes, that's fine. But Kai just doesn't seem to have any insecurity about the work that he creates. His process is so airtight that he just doesn't care if it seems like silly clothes to the outside world. These are just great. The last handful of looks appear to be kaleidoscopic, literally. Like it looks like Kai and the team took the plastic pieces out of the end of a bunch of kaleidoscope toys or a bunch of spirographs and just made a complete dress out of them. Color shifting in the room. I honestly love that Kei Ninomiya feeds us a healthy dose of fashion acid every 6 months. I would hate fashion weeks without this. Avenue George the Cinq. Givenchy is in a time of transition. It's an old house. It's one of the best known French houses of all time, and they are currently looking for a creative director. But they don't stop making collections, and they don't stop doing runway shows. So right now we are doing what's called studio collections, and we are going to go learn more about how Givenchy specifically handles transition periods like this. Cool.
Let's go. This is cold.
Yeah. It has been 6 months since Matthew Williams' last women's wear show for Givenchy. After his Spring 24 show, Matthew designed a pre-fall collection and then bowed out of the 71-year-old house. Personally, I'm pretty sad to see him go. I don't think a lot of media outlets gave those shows the attention that they deserved, but I'm also excited to see what's next for the Maison. I want Jun Takahashi to go in that chair so badly, and it's going to be really embarrassing if when this comes out, there's like been an announcement of who is CD now. I want Jun Takahashi. Who do you want?
Nancy Dojaka.
Who is it?
Nancy Dojaka.
Hell yeah. But for now, we are in the capable hands of the talented Givenchy Design Studio and Atelier. What I really like about this studio collection in particular is that it is making heavy use of the codes that Hubert himself established. And so between creative directors, they're able to kind of cast the vision backwards so there is a consistent through line through the whole history of the house. And to be frank, the Givenchy team is just a bunch of really friendly, excitable people. They were thrilled to show us everything about this collection. Among many other things, they told us that this beautiful beaded dress has Hubert's cat embroidered on it. The print is essentially the same one that Hubert drew for his fall 1952 couture collection. At that time, people loved it. We saw a beaded cat version as well as a printed version. We are all about Hubert this season. These tops were circular knit, which is just beautiful. They created a peplum by folding and knitting the hem underneath. Volume from the waist was a theme this season, and it wasn't just in the knits, but in various jackets and coats, pockets. It was in a dress. But throughout the collection, there was a clear focus on detail that speaks to that mid-20th century haute couture look that this house was born from. And actually, speaking of haute couture, this lace was woven in the Givenchy haute couture atelier. Oh shit, baby, look.
Oh, I didn't even notice. Time to fix it.
Damn. Thank you.
Wow, down.
Down. And speaking of haute couture, this lace was woven in the Givenchy haute couture atelier. And that's actually a really important thing to note here. While Givenchy hasn't shown a full haute couture collection since Claire White Keller's sensational spring 2020 show, the atelier has remained busy, creating crucial and often painstaking pieces of art for the ready-to-wear collection since then. These dresses feature these unique necklines, what Givenchy calls hirondelles, end up appearing like a scarf swept up in the wind, though the name is inspired by the tail feathers of a swallow. Rooster feathers were on jackets, and most notably the final look, which was confirmed to be a wedding dress, which is pretty uncommon to close out ready-to-wear collections, but a staple of haute couture, especially during the era in which Hubert was working. We're in a transitional period right now. Maison Givenchy is evolving. My hope is that they take a big risk so that all of us, including Givenchy, can reap the reward of that risk in the coming years. In the short period of time that Uma Wang has been showing in Paris, she has clearly made a mark with her perfectly dingy brand. Her work overall stems from a particularly antiquated point of inspiration, usually linked to travel. Last season, she was inspired by Venice. This season, there seems to be a visual theme of the Renaissance in her work, though she takes that theme and abstracts it into its most ramshackle parts. While doing that, though, Uma Wang likes to create contrast. Even though you might associate her work with earthy and kind of worn-out tones, she has this desire to upend whatever preconceptions you may have about the ideas of decay. Last season, soggy blues were contrasted with highlighter pink. And this season, the gold-coated canvas is much flashier than the red browns and the blacks. The gold fits particularly well with the Renaissance theme, though. Its place in the collection is like a yellowing varnish on a priceless 16th century painting, where you kind of aren't sure if the painting would be better or worse if you restored it. We know that Uma loves the ruinous look of clothes, but you would be wrong to mistake that source of inspiration with the quality of her product. Do her clothes look dingy and worn out? Yes, they absolutely do. Do her clothes look messy and unfinished? Never. Fashion students need to take note of that. She is able to achieve the worn out look, but the clothes, the product, still looks like a beautiful piece of finished clothing that you would be willing to pay luxury prices for. And where Uma's exactitude was most visible this season was in her silhouette. Even in the subtle silhouette magic, like those exposed sleeveless shoulder pads that lifted the floor-length shift dresses. Most prominently, an important silhouette for Uma Wang this season was created by these cocoon coats where hands jutted out of the flat pockets. It's a great use of a Margiela reference. And her mastery of tailoring, can't ignore it. We see a lot of kick flips with it this season. However, where draping is found in this collection, it's deeply purposeful. And unlike most other brands, it looks shockingly stiff, dense, but dynamic. And it's combined with these giant knots and these furry stoles. The styling was great for this. Last season, we saw plague doctor masks being converted into these really beautifully shaped sunglasses, but this season, we see medieval Renaissance hennons being turned into headbands that surround the whole head. It's not like a one-to-one, but the image used in Uma's promotional materials this season, Portrait of a Lady, features this black headband with the hennon, but not the pointy kind. There were many different styles of them. If I had to guess, though, it was the headband piece, the overall shape of a divided style of hennon, and our latest coquette obsession with bows that morphed to create these severe velvet headpieces. It's the best parts of a hennon made simple and striking. I am really excited to see if those get made into product. Okay, big surprise. We are going up to Thom Browne now. Thom Browne did not show in Paris. He shows in his homeland of New York. But the showroom is here in Paris. It's very fitting of Paris Fashion Week, and we're going to go check it out. I am super excited because I have never gotten to see the runway stuff up close. This is going to be sick. And then we are magically transported to Thom Browne's universe. I think it may be fair for us to call Thom Browne the king of finishings. I mean, just look at this shit. Okay, and something that does need to be emphasized here is that while Thom has absolutely shown at Haute Couture Week in Paris, this right here, this is a ready-to-wear collection. You heard me right. This coated tweed technique is just one idea among the tons of other ideas in a ready-to-wear show. I just feel like so many designers would have taken the coated tweed and made a whole couture collection out of it. But not Thom Browne. This really is a brand, and the reason why we're kind of breaking the rules. I mean, this collection was shown in New York, and they just had a showroom in Paris. The reason we're covering it is because Thom Browne, the company, sets such crazy standards for itself. We know that because they seemingly just don't take anything for granted. Like, for example, where one brand would buy one style of tweed to use for the whole collection, I have found no less than 5 unique tweeds for this collection. And by the way, Thom Browne uses Lesage tweeds. It is the best tweed in the world. That's what's going on here. Lesage can create any kind of tweed you want. To buy 5 or possibly more sets of tweed from Lesage, that is a whole line item on the budget. And then you dunk them in tar. Like, thematically, this show was about Edgar Allan Poe's poem, The Raven. If that wasn't obvious from the Nevermore painted on all of these jackets, or these felt ravens on this white silk moire. Like, okay, wait, look at the back of this jacket. This attention to detail, being able to keep the image so high fidelity over different stitches, it's so good. The hair from this show, despite the show being obviously raven themed, did have a kind of like bug quality to it, supported by Thom Browne's staff, who told us that these series of belts are called centipedes. At least that's what they call them internally. I loved getting to see this collection up close. This channel doesn't cover any fashion weeks other than Paris, for now at least, and with Thom being the president of the CFDA, he of course shows in New York, so we haven't gotten to see a collection from Thom in a while. It felt great being able to look through this work again. It's time for Ruohan. You don't know this, but I know that this is the last event of all of Fashion Week, which is crazy. I am exhausted and happier than I've ever been in my entire life. We get to go back to the Lafayette Anticipation, which is a beautiful art space in Paris. I love coming here. This is where I originally saw the Margiela exhibit, which was my original reason for coming to Paris for a fashion purpose. Ruohan is still in her early phase. I'm really excited to see how she develops this kind of everyday practical minimalism, but with a really distinctive voice for flowy materials and cuts that appear very simple, but that you just don't see very many other places. As always, I'm open to being surprised. Let's go see. So congratulations.
Thank
This
you.
was very beautiful. So let's look at one for sure I wanted to talk about was this one. Can you tell me what's going on here?
And then when I start this collection, I was trying to research something, to go back to my collection of lines to see what I can bring back. And then from last collection, we have a stripe, cotton, which very, very subtle, you barely see. And I was thinking, oh my God, if I can find something similar as that, but more soft, more invisible, would be very interesting. And then I'm living in Shanghai, and then in Shanghai, there is a big thing of a scooter right now. Everyone has their scooter, they go to work by scooter, and then they actually cover their scooter with this kind of fabric, but in metallic. Everything starts from fabric, especially for style like Ruohan. The fabrication and the sewing details are very important, especially fabrication. For some pieces, as a designer, I only give it a cut. I didn't really give the entire look. I always believe this idea of affordance, where if you have a very good material in hand, you do a very minimal design yourself, and the material speaks itself, the drape itself. That's why picking material, picking color, the sewing technique is more important than me as a designer, I think.
Can you tell me a little bit about, this one was really interesting to me because just the texture seems so, other side? The texture seems very chaotic, but I would love to hear about that one. Is it a crepe?
So I picked this very matte, very dry viscose crepe. And this skirt, the cutting actually is very interesting. So the collection actually starts with this structure as an intersection, how lines forms into a point. And then for this little structure, I did it a lot of places where like this, we place it on the shoulder. And then like this, we just zoom it up as a huge proportion and then give it another silhouette by draping, but it's the exactly same structure here. And then see how different fabrication acts differently with the same structure.
And it's the same shape experiencing tensions through different parts of the garment that are working with different parts of the body.
Yes.
Because I noticed I played with the invitation a lot, just in my hand, just fidgeting with it, and it was so strange. Like it was almost like playing with like bias cut versus non-bias cut, where it's just sort of like, oh, it behaves so differently if you pull on it in different ways.
And then the original idea was how lines forms into a point. Of course, I don't want to do one pleat, one dot. It's not really my design language. I always want to go a second layer. So I played with the structure of that origami and then try to mimic the origami but into a stable structure, and that how these kind of stuff form. And then why it's not conjuncted together is SS22 actually SS24, the previous collection about lines. I investigate a lot about the architecture in southern part China, where all the structure of the building are kind of like this instead of pulling together, where for this collection as the last chapter, with the language of points, I want to record a little bit of the two collections before. So that's how everything forms and how everything originated from this collection, also as a conclusion of the previous two collections.
A good idea is a good idea is a good idea. Esther Manez and her business partner and newly wedded husband, Balthazar, had a really, really good idea. They've always attempted to tackle one of the problems that the fashion industry claims has no solution: size inclusivity. And I feel like this issue is a lot more universal than most people, meaning men, more so than most people realize. Like, for example, I think a lot of guys just assume that the issue with size inclusivity is that the industry is fat phobic. Rest assured, the industry is fat phobic. But it also affects women who just have a larger bust for their frame. They can't find anything that fits them just because their boobs are big. So it's not just that dresses stop at a size 14. If you are a size 8, say, but you just have large breasts, it's not going to look the way that you want it to look. There's actually a really good Articles of Interest podcast episode about this if you want to learn more about it. Okay, so Esther and Balthazar, since they started the brand, have created this approach to design that emphasizes solutions and aesthetics. Like, imagine that, not having to choose between the two. And it works. Like, if you don't believe the runway footage, you can just look at the women that they dress for the show. There's a lot of body variety, and everyone looks beautiful in these clothes. The best single idea from the show was this knit with a bra kind of on the outside. Like, just when you think we've explored every variation on cleavage, someone flips the script again. We then headed across town to Artizai, a couturier that also makes very elaborate ready-to-wear. Can we talk about the jacquard?
Yes,
that's beautiful.
Let's talk about it. The jacquard. So
jacquard is so underrated in suiting.
Yes, so I like it a lot, and you see it in our couture collections as well. This is actually a connection to some of those couture pieces, but an abstracted version. So this jacquard is illustrating an abstraction of the Persian rose. And it's really a play of light when you mix. So here we mix the organic cotton with the organic silk. So you have this very beautiful shine. And then you have these sets of the jacket, the vest, and you, of course, you always have this kind of geometrical cuts in our pieces. I have this obsession of the shape, so I like when it's very sculptural and very defined and strong. So there is a bold idea in this tailoring that I really, really like. There's always these kind of geometrical lines in my work, or the kind of abstraction of floral patterns, or so since it all started with the geometry as well, it's kind of referring to the first stone cut I created. Yes, the trench coat is one of our, it's one of my favorite pieces in this collection, with the really statement color, the voluminous pleated silhouette around the arms, all the details with the belt and the buckle, the details in the back. So you have like these A-line pleats in the back.
Oh, that's okay. Yeah, it's all one.
Yes.
It is a very literal pleat. This is a great evolution of the trench coat. So cool.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. This is another signature I've been working on, to have like something that really defines Artizai. You can see directly it's a Artizai piece, because it's connecting to the first stone cut again. So.
And what you mentioned this before. What was the first stone cut?
So actually, I have it somewhere here. I would love to show it.
White glove treatment. Nice.
So here you have the stone. So this is one of the This is actually the base of the maison and how everything started with me creating this symmetry inside of the amethyst stone. So these are the lines that you see recurring in the collection and in all the details. If you look closely into a gemstone, yes, if you look into stones, and especially if you're using different techniques, you can read the atomic structure and everything, and that's what's fascinating, and that's what the Diffraction of Light collection was about. So I really looked into the details of the atomic structures and how light reflects and what kind of beauty that creates in patterns. So and then kind of transferring that to the idea of like, okay, textiles or you know, prints, and not only that, the idea can also be transferred to the whole silhouette of a piece. So I think it's very interesting to work with fashion in that sense of you really, when you look at the nature and you look at the things we have around, they're pretty fascinating in themselves. And it's really interesting to transfer that kind of idea to clothing.
Absolutely, yeah. And I was then so thrilled to be able to go interview Bianca Saunders for a full hour and look at her new collection. Bianca shared some really outstanding details about the new clothes with me.
So I'm Bianca Saunders, I'm a menswear designer, and I have a brand called Bianca Saunders. I've been going for 6 years now.
For the collection overall, is there a continuity here that is represented by like 3 or 4 pieces, or is it more just kind of like there was a central idea and that gets expressed in different ways?
I think definitely there's a lot of continuity with this collection, like especially like for example, these tailored boxy jackets. So then that's kind of continued on with like the black and then also the grey, but the black version has like a shirt sleeve, so that's kind of like more of a hybrid jacket, whereas this one kind of like sits in between, so it has like the sort of like sportswear detailing, but not bringing it into the sportswear era.
And that just allows you more free range of movement with the arm?
Yeah, I think I really like the idea of like slots that kind of like appear with movement, so like things opening up, but then there's a stretch mesh in between, so it won't give you like too much like this is gonna massively expand.
No, wait, there's a stretch on the inside built into the...
Yeah. So that when it doesn't move, it's not going to fully expose like...
the seam and then pull the seam apart. I gotcha.
Yeah,
cool.
Yeah.
It's like a really approachable way to do an oversized shoulder, I feel like.
Yeah, definitely.
It doesn't like, it's not like Balenciaga eye-catching, but it's something where you can kind of add something extra to the silhouette without, you know, it ruining or inconveniencing your day, I guess.
We also have this in the red vinyl. So this is a double face like wall twill, and I wanted to kind of like create a jacket that had like it actually came from the Rain Mac, so the Turini trench. I guess the original reference like it was a woman's jacket, but I really like the idea of like looking into women's wear, but then transforming it into menswear. So that play like kind of comes in and out. I think what's quite good is actually like the shoulder is actually working, which is we got it like right. It really forms around your shoulder really nicely.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
And the seam is up over
my
shoulder, which is...
So it kind of follows a bit like a vest sort of like idea. Because a lot of like menswear sort of was like directly on the shoulder or trying to make it like look broader. I was like, why not like play with the idea of it just being the natural shoulder coming out? I think this jacket I would say is very much hybrid because it's a stretched wool, so it's like it kind of has the idea of like a gilet, but it's not, with like the shirt sleeves and like the double like gusset sleeve, so like the sleeve there and then also the back version as well too.
What is a gilet?
It's a jacket that's no sleeves.
I can't get over how approachable. I mean, I have broad shoulders. They are not this broad. I feel like this is like you can live your life in this.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think I like that idea of like day to night and still looking good and still not feeling uncomfortable, but feeling comfortable.
It more like literally ties into the idea of clothes as armor.
Yeah,
Cool.
yeah, no, that's true.
Do you mostly just wear your own clothes now?
So this jacket is like from. I think I probably live in this jacket, but this is like. AW 19, so that's probably like 3 or 4 years ago now, which is like insane.
You've gotten good use out of it.
Yeah, I definitely got good use out of it for sure. I mostly like the outer pieces, the trousers. So I got the shift jeans, shift trousers. I wear that all the time. And then of course the shirts, because I have so many of them. So,
Cool.
yeah.
This is wonderful.
Thank
so
you.
much.
That's been great. Thank you for coming.
Next, we headed to the Dover Street Market showroom to speak with the young designer Valériane Venance.
So I'm Valériane. I'm a designer based in London. The brand is called Indépendante de cœur, which means independent at heart. It was the last sentence left in a courtesan testament. She said that despite public opinion, she stayed independent at heart. I started this brand in 2021. Essentially started in my living room. I didn't have a studio, I was just making clothes. It sort of took off thanks to my friends. They would ask me, you know, I want a dress to go to a certain event. Can you make me something?
That's like the classic designer story is like, you're just like, oh, I was just making things for friends. And then everyone said, this is very good. You should just do this. That's cool.
Mm-hmm. They're all hanging out here. This is the crew. All of the collection is mainly made in wool, boiled wool that you have here. So a heavy one, and the clothes are lined in linen, natural linen.
Oh, beautiful.
Yeah.
Okay, can I tell you that I actually love linen for lining?
Yes.
And almost no one uses it, but if you get used to it after having it for a little bit, it feels a little bit different if you're used to like rayon. Mm-hmm. But then once you wear it for a little bit, you don't want anything else for your lining. It feels great if it's natural linen.
Exactly, yeah. I'm really OCD with symmetry. I don't like symmetrical things. It does something to my brain. And I always try to get a little destruction in the pattern cutting, a little of grain thing or pleats that you can sort of see it on this. So if that would be a flat pattern piece, it would look like that. Here you have linen. So a little bag in linen that's taking the heart shape that's on the logo. My Riri zippers that I'm proud of, and lined in linen inside.
You know what my favorite thing about Riri zippers is the way that they sound.
I know.
They sound so different, and I've never, like, everyone that I say that to thinks I'm crazy. I'm so glad you actually understand that.
Hear that?
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Yeah. So you're still making all of the clothes yourself, or do you have any manufacturing lined up?
No, all the clothes myself in my studio with the help of Lauren, who's right there, and a seamstress sometimes.
Very cool. Very cool. So it's very limited runs for now?
Yeah, very limited runs, and everything is local, sourced locally. All the materials come from the UK.
You do hate symmetry.
Yes.
That's a good thing, because it's interesting to me that the more I've learned about men's tailoring, the more that I hear tailors say, like, it's this huge misconception. Everyone thinks that their shoulders are even. No human being has ever had even shoulders, and no one has like an even torso. Everything is one side and the other side.
Yes.
And so being able to kind of acknowledge that and play that out for ready to wear is a pretty cool idea. I like that a lot.
Thank you.
Yeah. Despite all of the chaotic traffic issues that Paris was under this week because of preparations for the Olympics over the summer, we headed across town and made it in time for Marie Adam Lehnert. The show notes for Marie's latest collection were in a shipping box label holder, and a key sentence was skirt, 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 skirt. Do not make a rap joke. Do not make a... No surprise, this show is about skirts. Everything has the distinctive look of a skirt, in coats and dresses, even in this gigantic bag that's tiered with zippers. It looks like the many layers of a crinoline. But the skirt influence is most clearly seen in the necklines, which feature belt loops and in some cases, fabric belts. It's a great idea. I've never thought of coats as being able to feature the ability for a pussy bow. Another fantastic idea from Marie are these protruding coat plackets. I love this part of her work. I saw this in her last show and I loved seeing it again. This is the motif that can help her build a distinctive brand signature. She incorporates that protruding detail into the skirts themselves. And that skirt protrusion purposefully disrupts the shape of some longer tunic-length tops. Marie has kind of a funny eye. She has this ironic streak in her work that could have been instilled in her during her time at Balenciaga. Outside of just the ultra mega-sized skirt bag, these triple bags are a great way of seeing that Balenciaga influence. Designers that are still coming into their own are usually under pressure to create a hit product, something that can sustain the rest of the brand's activity until it gains more solid financial footing. It's no surprise that a hit bag can really create a whole brand. I bet Marie has been given that advice by so many people. And in response, Marie says, "You want me to design a hit bag? I will give you 3. You want more? Here's the most bag I could possibly give you." And you know what? It works. I like it. Marie cares an awful lot about silhouette, whether it's this variety of shoulders in the collection or these gargantuan gowns that close the show. She's an ambitious designer. And if the future is any indication of the past, she will keep making meaningful strides every season. Looking forward to more evolution. It is honestly the craziest thing to me that people sit through these multi-hour analysis videos. I think I'm speaking really for Daniela and for myself when we're honored. Thank you for being here, and thank you for watching this. We do not take just your eyes being here for the whole time. We really don't take that for granted. Okay, don't think too hard. What was your favorite single collection from the whole week?
Issei.
Yeah, it was beautiful. Do you have a single favorite look from either that show or any other show that's just like, that look has really stuck with me?
The sleepy look from Issei, look 1.
Yeah, that was really beautiful. I think personally my favorite show this season was Enfants Riches Déprimés. They really showed out this season, and I think my favorite look, it's the same thing. It's the that angel of death look. So I've thought about it so much. The fact that she's holding keys, something about that is there's this big silver ring of keys. Here's the deal. We don't really want everyone to support this. My rule is just that if while watching these huge analysis videos or the questions videos that we put out or any of the episodes that we do, if you get a piece of information that you have chewed on in your head a bunch, if we have changed your mind about something, if we've helped you understand something, or if we've just given you a couple of hours that was really fun to watch and listen to, we just ask that you give what you got out of it back into the channel through the Patreon. We are super proud to be independent, but that means that we need consistent monthly financial support. And hey, you're not really doing me any favors. I mean, we have dozens of videos on there that I'm very proud of and that I'm really proud to only be able to give to the people that do support us in that way. So sign up, patreon.com/blissfoster. This was exhausting. I am so happy. Normally we release episodes every week. Getting this one out was kind of a monster, and so we kind of had to get off of the weekly schedule for a little bit. We release videos every Monday at 11 a.m. Eastern time. Check in then. You're going to love it. We've got some really good stuff coming. See ya. Okay, I think that's it. I'm so tired.